DeMaine shared these photos of his father with Eyewitness News, saying the family believes this all started with an argument outside his uncle's house, which is the yard where Robert's body was found, and that investigators believe the people Robert were...
Is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public?
Yes.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah.
And for Israel in the history of the world. And the Jewish people in Israel love him like he's the king of Israel. They love him like he is the second coming of God.
Robert's son DeMaine told us he actually heard the gunshots that killed his dad, but didn't realize it had anything to do with his father until Robert's girlfriend started pounding on his door frantically, telling him that his dad had been shot. DeMaine shared these photos of his father with Eyewitness News, saying the family believes this all started with an argument outside his uncle's house, which is the yard where Robert's body was found, and that investigators believe the people Robert was arguing with left, then came back and shot him. He said police believe alcohol was involved in the argument. He said the ordeal was like a bad dream and that the family is still numb and processing the tragedy, which took place just hours before they planned to share Thanksgiving dinner. Now he's most concerned about his grandmother, Robert's mother, who shared a home across the way from where he was killed.
I'm not really too much worried about myself. It's more of like my grandmother right now, because right now she is pretty much by herself right now. But so now I have constantly people coming over here 24/7 to check on her.
Robert said it's more painful thinking that he could have helped his father quicker or alerted authorities faster had he reacted to the shots he heard. DeMaine said the family does plan to have some sort of Thanksgiving dinner, but it's understandably all in flux right now. He said they are coordinating an online fundraiser to help cover funeral expenses.
But what's really interesting is this tweet from Sakir Starmer yesterday. Take a look. Showing he's been sitting down with the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock, telling Britain that the only way to secure growth and create wealth is working with private mega wealth funds such as BlackRock. And if you don't know about BlackRock and how they operate, let me tell you a little bit about them. They're the world's largest asset manager with over $8.5 trillion in assets. They have their fingers in every pie you can think of: big pharma, big tech, farming, agriculture, government contracts, and even recently deals with Zelensky to rebuild Ukraine. Isn't that interesting? Their power is so huge that most of all the woke DEI quotas you see at companies all around the world almost certainly lead back to CEO Larry Fink and his company, BlackRock.
The power is so huge that most of all the woke DEI quotas you see at companies all around the world almost certainly lead back to CEO Larry Fink and his company, BlackRock.
The RNC and the DNC don't want people talking about it because they're both paid by BlackRock. And BlackRock owns the processed food companies that are poisoning us. And they own the pharmaceutical companies that are making $4.3 trillion a year, 5 times our defense budget, treating the chronic disease that's being caused by BlackRock's other, group of companies. BlackRock owns all the military contractors, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Lockheed, etc., that are destroying all the ports and bridges and schools and, roads in Ukraine. And they also have the contract for rebuilding Ukraine. So you have, both parties are being supported by BlackRock.
I can argue in the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations. That's something that most people never talked about. We always used to think shrinking population is a cause for negative growth. But in my conversations with the leadership of these large developed countries that have xenophobic immigration policies, they don't allow anybody to come in, shrinking unemployment, shrinking demographics. These countries will rapidly develop robotics and AI and technology. And if the promise, and it's going to happen, but if the promise of all that transforms productivity, which most of us think it will, we'll be able to elevate the standard of living of countries, the standard of living of individuals, even with shrinking populations. And so the paradigm of negative population growth is going to be changing. And the social problems that one will have in substituting humans for machines is going to be far easier in those countries that have declining populations. And so for those countries that have rising populations, the answer will be education, and so rapidly develop. For those countries that do not have a foundation of rule of law or education, they're going to be left. That's where the divide's going to get more and more extreme.
For those countries that do not have a foundation of rule of law or education, they're going to be left. That's where the divide's going to get more and more extreme.
Breaking right now at 11 o'clock, a deadly house fire in the Hollywood Hills. And tonight we're learning about the man with the very famous last name who lived and died there. Eyewitness News reporter Jory Rand live in the Hollywood Hills with the breaking new details tonight. Jory.
Mark, firefighters had a difficult time accessing this home because it's set so far back off the road, and it's at the top of a very steep hill with a very thin stairwell leading up there. Once they did access the home, they made the tragic discovery inside, and it turns out the man who lived there might have been a billionaire. Hollywood Hills neighbors did everything they could to put out this raging fire that broke out at a home on Lookout Mountain Avenue.
I was going up the stairs, and right as I approached the top of the stairs, the flames burst out of the house.
Firefighters knocked down the flames in about 20 minutes, but found the home's elderly occupant dead inside. Neighbors identifying him as Will Rothschild of the Rothschild family.
Him as Will Rothschild of the Rothschild family.
Will Rothschild of the Rothschild family.
We're getting a new roof put on tomorrow, and so I told my wife to email him to make sure it's okay that we use part of his driveway. And he never responded, and I said, well, that's so unlike him.
Rothschild is described by neighbors as an eccentric millionaire or even billionaire with multiple properties and dozens of some of the most expensive cars on earth. But on a street lined with multi-million-dollar homes and mansions occupied by celebrities and the powerful, Rothschild was said to have lived as a bit of a recluse in a small, old, rickety home in conditions described as that of a hoarder, something the fire department seemed to tactfully confirm tonight.
Given the fire damage, it's kind of hard to determine how much of that was prior to the fire and how much of it is the building itself that has been demolished by the fire.
And while some neighbors had never even seen him and assumed the house was vacant, those that did know him are saddened by the loss.
It is very sad. He was a good guy, good neighbor.
This is very tough for those that knew him. Arson investigators were on scene, but the fire department tells me that is typical for any fire in which someone loses their life. Once they cleared their investigation, the coroner came to remove the body. We are now awaiting a cause of death to see whether he had passed before the fire or he perished within the fire. Now we await to see what kind of treasures may have been inside of this. We've already gotten a peek at some of the cars on the property.
Modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words. Dear Lord Rothschild.
Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question because it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, but they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And in addition, it was, after all, in Great Britain. So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely feel it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. If you think it took 3,000 years to get to this. And then you say, how did this miracle happen? It's the most incredible piece of opportunism. I mean, if you think you had an impoverished would-be scientist, Chaim Weizmann, who somehow gets to England, meets a few people, including members of my family, seduces them. He has such great charm and conviction. He gets to Balfour, and he unbelievably persuades Balfour and Lloyd George, the Prime Minister, and most of the ministers, that this idea of the national home for Jews should be allowed to take place. I mean, it's so unlikely. And then he, starts to fight a difficult battle with the British cabinet, and this letter goes through 5 drafts, as you know. And in the end, it comes out as a rather compromising letter. I mean, the essential point is there for the Jewish community to fasten on to. You have the first bit, which promises a national home rather than the national home. And then you have the bit that nothing that's to be done should in any way harm the Arab community. But you come back to the big point, which is that this is perhaps the greatest event in Jewish life for thousands of years.
86-year-old William de Rothschild found dead inside of his home. Brian Lindsay has lived in Lookout Mountain for roughly 25 years.
It's a colorful place with a lot of colorful people, and Will was sort of classic Laurel Canyon. Wonderful guy.
Brian and others say William was known in Laurel Canyon and known in Los Angeles for a specific passion.
His thing was cars. He was an expert on vintage race cars, and he would show me some of his vintage race cars, and he knew so much about them. He had a vintage race car that had belonged to Frank Sinatra, and another one that had belonged to Michael Jordan.
The fire halted before it could spread to neighboring homes, but tonight it is not the loss of one home echoing through this canyon. It is the loss of a memorable man. The mayor's crisis response team is here for anyone who wants to talk, and arson investigators are on scene as well. What happened, Colleen, we still don't know, but one member of the LAFD tells me tonight that William was found at the front door.
In local 10 News tonight, a major find tied to a decades-old cold case. A couple that simply vanished after spending the winter here in South Florida.
A group of volunteers were retracing their steps. Andrew Perez is live in Sunny Isles Beach with the critical clues they uncovered.
Their phone out. It's the moment they knew they were really onto something. A small piece of a car stuck in time underwater.
We were able to confirm at least it was a Lincoln Continental, and we could confirm that it was indeed black.
Human remains also found. The car filled with personal belongings. John Martin and his brother with Sunshine State Sonar made the find. A volunteer team known for cracking cold cases by scanning lakes, canals, and ponds with sonar, finding a car that matched the same one driven by Charles and Catherine Romer, last heard from on Easter of 1980.
Every single year, they would, for the winter months, leave New York and go to Miami and stay in that vacation home. And they would come home around, usually around April.
Their disappearance is highly unusual.
It was a big case at the time. Charles, a former oil executive, and his wife were retired. The Snowbirds left South Florida to go to New York for the spring, but stopped in Georgia along the way. New intel leading Sunshine State Sonar up to Brunswick, retracing steps, scanning a retention pond right near a hotel with no visibility underwater.
I didn't know which window I was at, but there was a window open, and I just reached in and started feeling, and I just felt something that was long, and, said, what's this? And I grabbed, came up to the shoreline, and looked at my hand, and it just happened to be a female.
Once they realized there were remains, they stopped diving and called investigators who had the retention pond drained. So many personal items, from high-dollar jewelry to belt buckles with initials inscribed. Authorities trying to get everything out and understand exactly what happened and why. This was a big case at the time. Many believed the wealthy couple might have been robbed or killed or kidnapped at that time. The identities still need to be made here. They also still need to determine a cause of death. Meanwhile, for Sunshine State Sonar, this is possibly the 13th major case that they've helped crack. We'll keep you posted. That's the latest out here in Sunny Isles Beach.
Their descent on Aleppo has been blistering in its speed, taking the Syrian regime and the world by surprise. Opposition fighters now control much of the city, and they're vowing to take the capital, Damascus, next.
And guys, Russian state media is now reporting that Russian jets are fighting back, launching air raids in parts of Aleppo overnight. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says at least 287 people have been killed since the rebels' surprise offensive began. Gio?
All right, a very dangerous situation there in Aleppo.
Fighting in Syria's northwest is a sharp escalation in a war that had all but slipped off the international radar. Is another major conflict about to flare back up in the Middle East?
It's the biggest flare-up in years in a civil war that has seen involvement by Russia, Iran, the U.S., Turkey, and Israel.
And mostly the unknown aspect of Mr. Trump's unpredictability is causing the Ayatollah in Tehran to really be cautious. Now, my concern is that China and Russia are going to have a role here. Of course, they're aligned with Iran. They're helping the Houthis to make the Red Sea more dangerous. And, of course, they're helping Assad in Damascus. So they're not going to abandon Hezbollah for now, but they're going to resupply, and eventually we'll get back in a few years to much the same threat that was posed, 14 months ago by Hezbollah.
To Syria now, where the army has withdrawn from the country's second largest city, Aleppo, in the face of a surprise rebel advance. The army says it's regrouping ahead of the arrival of reinforcements. Meanwhile, Russia, Syria's key ally, has promised to step up military aid and air support. Sky's Tom Cheshire from Beirut has more.
This is really significant. To see the entire city fall in 24 hours, as we did yesterday, is, beyond dramatic. It's like an earthquake in the scale of the last 13, 14 years of the Syrian crisis.
That mention of Turkey is really, really important here, because there is this wider regional conflict at play. Turkey and Russia were the signatories to that 2020 ceasefire. Turkey backing the rebels, Russia backing President Assad's regime. That did help, but it looks like Turkey perhaps has given the green light to this. That's what sources have told Reuters news agency, in an effort to tip the balance in this region to exert more influence. And it also shows, I think, the second-order effects of war. Russia has been fighting in Ukraine a long and grinding war, and as difficult it is for Ukraine, it is also difficult for Russia, which has committed manpower and also weaponry to Ukraine from Syria. But I think that really speaks to how a war in one place can have these cascading effects across the region, potentially redrawing the map of control and influence.
Only on Fox tonight, the mother of a 34-year-old woman beaten to death allegedly by her husband says she knew that day would arrive.
Fox 26's Randy Wallace reports from the Harris County Jail in downtown.
36-year-old Myron Strambler remains jailed in lieu of a $250,000 bond, accused of killing his wife. Her relatives hope he will be denied bond when he returns to court on Monday.
I knew that guy would kill my daughter. And he got her.
Michelle Heath says her daughter Alicia was like a lot of domestic violence victims, afraid to leave and manipulated to stay.
When your daughter calls you up from a stranger's phone that she's hiding in bushes with no shoes on her feet to get away from him. When your daughter calls you from a hospital and you hear a police officer asking her, what object did he use to do this to you? And she said his fist.
Police say Myron Strambler, a registered sex offender, beat Alicia to death Wednesday night at the Moonlight Inn at 5212 Airline. He was reportedly covered in blood when officers arrived.
She had started writing a book, was to help other women in this world not to go through this. If anybody can learn from my daughter's death, that's my point. I feel sorry for his mother because we both lost.
Alicia leaves behind a young son and daughter.
He's come at me before, so yes. I'm scared if he got out, he'd come and kill me or have somebody do it for him.
At 6 p.m. Saturday, a vigil will be held for Alicia in front of the motel where she died.
You know, I think part of why Kamala's getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Yes.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman's uncomfortable?
Yes. And Gates.
And Gates. Yeah. And I only ask that because you just look at them and you're like, that's a nervous person right there. I don't know. I mean, I assume you know them. Yeah.
Yes. Reid Hoffman was my vice president of business development at PayPal. 24 years ago.
Does he seem nervous to you?
Bill Gates gave a really weird interview today where he was asked about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
It was reported at that time that you had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. It was reported that you continued to meet with him over several years. and that, in other words, a number of meetings. What did you do when you found out about his background?
Well, I said I regretted having those dinners, and there's absolutely nothing new on that.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Well, he's dead, so, in general, you always have to be careful. I'm very proud of what we've done in philanthropy, very proud of the work of the foundation. That's what I get up every day and focus on.
He knows what is going to happen.
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. So the Gates Foundation, along with a great number of partners, are looking at these different efforts. We've never created a new vaccine in less than 5 years. So this is urgent, and it's going to require incredible collaboration. It's going to have to go to 7 billion people.
Scientists do that. They do things that are interesting to them, but they also follow the money.
So this is urgent, and it's going to require incredible collaboration. It's going to have to go to 7 billion people.
Cuando tú no sepas de dónde vienen las cosas, ponte a buscar la financiación. Y es que todos los caminos llevan a Roma, en este caso nos llevan a Bill Gates.
The man charged in the 5 Points South mass shooting and 2 other deadly shootings in Birmingham now faces even more charges, including the mass shooting in July and another homicide in August. Here's a look at the timeline of these crimes. According to Birmingham police, 22-year-old Damian McDaniel of Bessemer is responsible for over 30% of the city's homicides from July to September. ABC 3340's Valerie Bell is working for you to learn more about these cases. Valerie, it's taken hours of investigating for police to piece all of these together.
It has, Megan, but the work doesn't stop there. Birmingham police say it's possible McDaniel could be connected to other unsolved homicides in Birmingham that hasn't been ruled out. Between July and September, Damian McDaniel is charged in 5 separate shootings. Altogether, he's accused of killing 11 people and injuring 29 others.
I feel like people like that need to be put away.
The deadly streak of crimes he's accused of started July 13th. It was at a venue ABC 3340 later discovered was unlicensed.
It's all right to make $1, but why should you make $1 you killing the neighborhood? This is my neighborhood.
The aftermath, blood on the streets, and anger and sadness in the community.
It's a shame. We got women dead now.
4 people were killed, 10 others were injured at that birthday party event.
Angie, I love you. Monique, my heart goes out to you. This is sad.
According to police, McDaniel didn't act alone in this deadly mass shooting. 27-year-old Hatarius Woods was also indicted in this case.
Birmingham is most definitely a safer place with these individuals behind bars.
McDaniel was also indicted for capital murder again and burglary for an incident that happened a month later. Woods is also charged in that case. It involved a stolen vehicle, a man killed in an apartment, officers firing shots at the suspect, and a chase.
Very chaotic scene.
McDaniel is also accused of killing a 35-year-old woman. Police didn't believe she was the intended target when she was shot inside 604 Bar on September 19th.
We are very deeply saddened by what happened.
A few days later, 100 shots rang out on a Saturday night in 5 Points South, a popular nightlife spot.
So probably about 5 or 6 that went out on the stretcher that I saw. I'm sure it was probably more.
4 people were killed, 17 others were injured.
I had to get out of there, so I was hopping on one leg.
Less than 24 hours later, dozens of rounds went off in Eastlake, killing a man and injuring 2 others. McDaniel has already had his first court appearance for that. 4 others were also charged in connection to that incident. As for the motive behind all these deadly shootings McDaniel is accused of, police aren't laying that out on the table yet.
We most certainly are investigating some of these homicides as actual paid-for-hire murders.
Court records show McDaniel pleaded guilty to 2 cases of attempted murder in 2023, receiving a sentence of 15 years split, 2 years to serve, with 3 years on probation. We've reached out to the DA's office asking about McDaniel's release and what, if anything, will be done in the future to keep violent offenders behind bars.
As far as them walking the streets and all of the evidence appears that they did it, then no good.
McDaniel remains in the Jefferson County Jail with no bond.
I feel safer for the community and especially the youth.
Mr. Trump in messianic terms, tweeting, "Thank you to Wayne Allen Root for the very nice words. President Trump is the greatest president for Jews and for Israel in the history of the world. And the Jewish people in Israel love him like he's the king of Israel. They love him like he is the second coming of God."
They love him like he is the second coming of God.
They have been responsible for a lot of great things for Israel. One of them was moving the embassy to Jerusalem, making Jerusalem the capital of Israel.
Good morning. Really, Donald Trump yesterday embraces the title of the King of Israel, what Jesus was called on the cross, and then the second coming of God, of course, borrowing from the second coming of Christ. And then after that, the chaser was Donald Trump, declaring, "I am the chosen one."
And what really punctuated it, in case you're just listening in the car, is his look to the heavens. While he said it, he turned and looked up to God and to thank him for choosing him.
I think we may all be experiencing something that the Jews experienced about 3,300 years ago. I would also like to add one other thing before I finish, and I'll make it fast. There has been some comments about 4 years of the president's term being the only president that has had 4 years of peace. But realistically, think about the tinderbox that President Trump inherited. North Korea, the Middle East, and what did he leave us with? He left us with a country that was prosperous, a world that was borderline on a global prosperity. He left us with the premier of North Korea meeting him at the border. He left us with the Abraham Accords. I mean, there is no question that what we have witnessed are miracles. And let's not fool ourselves. There is something going on here. And we all pray to God. We pray to Hashem. We pray to God. I mean, we as Christians and Jews pray every day for peace. And this is the one man that has given it to us. God bless him.
That was President Trump's first foreign trip in May of 2017. You may remember this. His first stop was strangely the authoritarian monarchy of Saudi Arabia, where King Salman literally rolled out the red carpet for Trump's arrival. The streets of the capital were filled with American flags. Even the men on horses accompanying his motorcade waved the stars and stripes. Billboards went up featuring his face in one of his tweets. Things only got weirder the next day when President Trump, the Saudi king, the Egyptian president walked into a darkened room at a new center for combating extremism and placed their hands atop a glowing orb for nearly 2 whole minutes. The internet had a lot of fun with that one, comparing to Lord of the Rings and Wizard of Oz.
The president and King Salman toured a new command center that will monitor extremism on social media. Israel is the next stop on the president's 9-day trip. The Israelis are already pushing back against the $109 billion arms agreement Mr. Trump made with the Saudis.
This is a battle between good and evil.
To you, I'm Rashi Vatz. A mother and her toddler are dead, and police believe that a family member may have been the one who killed them. This happened around 2:45 this morning at the Knox at West Chase Apartments, which is over on Richmond Avenue. Fox 26's Jade Fleury spoke to the victim and the suspect's mother.
The suspect's mother says that she warned police about her son's violent behavior just last weekend. Now she's blaming the police for the loss of her daughter and granddaughter.
He threatened our whole family to kill.
Tragedy struck the Knox at West Chase early Friday morning when a woman and a toddler were found dead inside of an apartment. Police alerted to the scene by a distressed family member. A man was also found inside the unit.
There was blood discovered on the mail as well as in the residence.
Investigators confirmed the suspect was the brother of the woman killed and uncle to the young child whose lives were tragically cut short.
I want to let y'all know how the police failed us.
The mother of the suspect, Joanna Fisher, says she warned police about her son's violent behavior over the weekend. She claims he was recently released from jail and has a history of violence against family members.
He had already beat the hell out of me. My son, Kendrick Rayvon Fisher Brinkley, he did this to his family.
Fisher also fears drugs may have fueled her son's actions in the act of violence against his sister and niece. She says warnings about his aggressive behavior seemingly went unheeded by police.
And I went to the courthouse, to the police station, and I got paperwork. Family violence. We did all this paperwork now. For what?
The family now seeking justice from one of their own.
If they had to do what the they were supposed to do, my family would be still up there. My grandbaby, I seen her the last time.
We did reach out to the Houston Police Department about that previous family violence call, but we are waiting to hear back from them. They do tell us that person of interest is in custody.
Look at things like artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
And robots. Look at things like gene editing.
Exactly.
You know, opening a whole new horizon for medical science.
And you see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity.
And offers certain kinds of possibilities that have to be careful about. You know, when you began to do that kind of gene editing, some people worry that you were changing what it means to be human.
That's the problem. And of course, the new industrial revolution offers us many opportunities, but it raises manifold questions on the ethical, but even legal implications. And we have to be prepared for it, and that's what we want to do.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
On appelle quelqu'un, on n'a même plus le réflexe de devoir prendre un appareil, ça se fait naturellement. Hein. La technique continue le corps.
Oui, vous parlez, vous dites, je veux maintenant être connecté avec n'importe qui. Et d'abord, vous avez les robots personnalisés. Et j'ai vu que M. Zuckerberg a prédit qu'à la fin de l'année, il va avoir son robot, son butler personnalisé qui est à sa disposition.
Comme dans Downton Abbey, on aura son butler personnel, son serviteur, son esclave.
Oui, mais il y a une différence. C'est un serviteur qui, avec l'intelligence artificielle, apprend et qui n'est pas seulement votre assistant pour des travaux manuels, qui peut vraiment être un partenaire intellectuel.
We in the Military Operations Department stand up to our responsibilities to put an end to the transgressions of this criminal regime and protect our people.
The attack shows the weakness of President Assad's regime as its allies fight in other wars. With Russia bogged down in Ukraine and Iran and its proxies weakened in the conflict with Israel. Syria's dictator has been left exposed.
The army says it has withdrawn its troops to prepare for a counter-offensive. Surprise advance by rebel fighters has been led by the Islamic group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They are based in the Idlib province, the last stronghold of militia forces in Syria. The group says they have control of the entire area, sweeping west and reaching Aleppo in 3 days. It's the first time the city has been under rebel control since the president's allies, Russia and Iran, forced them out 8 years ago.
We begin this hour with breaking news. Volodymyr Zelensky has suggested that he's prepared to give up some parts of Ukraine to Russia for the time being, so long as there is a ceasefire and his country is given NATO membership.
So as the ceasefire deal appears to be cracking at least a little bit, where is this all heading next? Author of the new book, Preparing for World War III, a global conflict that redefines tomorrow, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis joins us now. It's great to have you on the program this morning, and I want to get your take on this. The ceasefire appears to be intact, at least for now, but ultimately the sparring isn't a great sign that it could see 60 days, is it?
Yeah, Jackie, we've seen this for decades and decades. Certainly the 2006 fight was ended with UN Resolution 1701. It's almost identical to what we're seeing today. 60 days, a cool-off period.
I mean, they're fighting on multiple fronts here, but I'm wondering what you think this says about Iran, being that Hezbollah, Hamas, they're Iranian proxies, and an incoming Trump administration who has said it will be very tough on Iran. It will go back to a maximum pressure campaign. The fact that Hezbollah would even agree to said ceasefire, to me, indicates that Iranians are also saying, you know what, we should back off a little too.
Well, it's a calculation. They're concerned that JCPOA, of course, is dead under Trump, and they're going to get more sanctions. And then, of course, the U.S. is going to up its ante, perhaps militarily, in the region, which is going to stop more of those so-called ballistic missiles and drones that Iran would like to toss at Israel. So all of these factors, and mostly the unknown aspect of Mr. Trump's unpredictability, is causing the Ayatollah in Tehran to really be cautious.
This is CBS News Miami at 11 on this Thanksgiving holiday. We start off with breaking news. A family devastated tonight after a man is shot and killed over loud music. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anna McAllister. Our CBS News Miami's Ted Scouten was in Lauderdale Lakes where he spoke to the man's wife.
What should have been a day of family, friends, and celebration turned tragic. That's after a 72-year-old man was shot to death. It happened at this condo complex here in Lauderdale Lakes near Oakland Park Boulevard and Northwest 31st Avenue. Rose McLean is in agony. Her 72-year-old husband, Hurlian McLean, was gunned down just outside their apartment. She said it happened after a minor dispute with a neighbor.
He was playing his music today, and the guy said he was playing it too loud. So my husband went down there to him.
Rose said moments later, she heard the fatal shot.
I was inside changing my clothes and I hear a gunshot. Boom! So I run outside because I know that my husband went outside. That's the time when I go outside, I saw him on the floor.
She said the man with the gun threatened her too.
He was being very violent because I was saying, why did you shoot my husband? And he said to me, I must shoot him out. He will shoot me too.
We never expect death to happen.
At an evening prayer vigil, the family's pastor tried to comfort them, a very difficult task on a day we give thanks and celebrate family.
Today is extraordinarily crazy. It's crazy how mankind has gotten to the place wherein we don't honor life like we should honor.
One person was detained. BSO is still investigating. At this point, we're waiting to find out if charges will be filed.
News 5 following breaking news this morning. A triple homicide rocks a North Royalton neighborhood. 3 women, all found dead inside a home.
And this morning, we're now hearing from a family member. News 5's Meg Shaw is at the home for us. Good morning, Meg.
Yeah,
Yeah, good morning, Nick and Karina. Just a short time ago, I spoke with a woman who identified herself as the stepmother of the two young girls who were killed in this tragic incident. She says she saw the News 5 app of this story, came right out here to the scene. She was visibly shaken while looking at this home, just at a loss for words as she was describing the girls. At this point, we are not naming either one of those girls that were killed. We are still waiting for police to identify all family, or to contact all family members. Now, earlier this morning, I spoke with a detective with the North Royalton Police Department. He tells me they are now looking for multiple people in relation to this triple homicide, but says at this point, no one has been officially named as a person of interest. The bodies of the women were discovered yesterday by a family friend around 8 o'clock. I'm told the mother was in her mid-40s and the daughters were ages 19 and 21. That stepmother describing both girls as successful and good kids.
Gosh, they were so good. They were great students. This totally blindsided us.
Again, just had a loss for words here this morning. As you can see, police and BCI are still out here on the scene, very active in their investigation this morning. Just minutes ago, we saw them walking around the yard of this home. So again, a lot of work to be done in this investigation. We'll keep you updated on the latest information as soon as we get it.
There's a lot of concrete evidence that what is being done is a gigantic scientific study on how it is possible to change, to alter the human DNA so that, as put it, we can be programmed like computers. It's all about control.
As put it, we can be programmed like computers. It's all about control.
We will all see the building of the third temple in Jerusalem very soon. We know one of the reasons of the destruction of the Holy Temple was Jews were not united. Jews were not loving each other's. I don't want to say anything negative, but they were not positive, friendly, lovely. And our job to bring and to build a third temple is to unite. How appropriate it is tonight that we see all kinds of people, religious, not religious, Jews, not Jews, come together and we honor our President Trump for what he has done for Jerusalem and for the Jewish people. We all recognize what he has done for us, and he'll be awarded tonight with the Keter of Jerusalem Award, which he very much deserves. And we hope that this message will go out to the world. So when we sit here today, we are helping and sending out a message to the entire world, knowing that Jerusalem is a place that has to be secure for Jews, and we should very soon be able to see the building of the third temple.
Trump has every reason to make resetting relations with the Arab world a priority. His previous remarks about Muslims and the ban targeting Muslim-majority countries have led to widespread assumption that his administration is biased against Muslims. This was his chance to build bridges with 1.5 billion Muslims.
I stand before you as a representative of the American people to deliver a message of friendship and hope and love.
I'm just taking it moment by moment. That's what I'm going to do.
You just heard from a grief-stricken girlfriend of a man who lost his life in a bizarre, brutal, random killing. It happened at a golf course. Police say the suspect actually beat that victim with his own golf club.
Yeah, and that suspect is in jail tonight. Nico Clemens is in Palm Beach Gardens with an emotional interview with the victim's girlfriend.
A horrific tragedy at this golf course. Police say they don't have a motive, but they say right now this looks like a random attack. Victims' loved ones are devastated and struggling to make sense of it all.
It's a shock. You know, he's always there. Brian's my right arm.
He was the love of her life.
Just such a good person. He was exciting to be with. Always in a good mood, never depressed, wake up happy.
Dina Laurel says when she first met Brian Hiltebeitel, he took her breath away. The two lived in Philadelphia, but later moved to South Florida. 6 months of friendship turned into 17 years of love.
Just him walking in the door, knowing everything's gonna be all right.
Laurel says that's what she'll miss about Hiltebeitel. Palm Beach Gardens police say 65-year-old Hiltebeitel was at the Sandhill Crane Golf Club Monday when Junior Boucher repeatedly hit Hiltebeitel in the head with his own golf clubs. The police report says a witness told officers the two ended up in a pond. The suspect jumped on top of the victim and appeared to choke him. The witness told officers Hiltebeitel yelled, "He's trying to kill me," several times.
This appears to be a random act of violence.
Police say Boucher has an extensive criminal history, including drug charges, domestic battery, and battery on an officer. He was convicted in 2023 and served almost a year in jail. Lives changed forever.
I don't know. How am I doing? I'm just taking it moment by moment. That's what I'm gonna do. That's the plan.
Police say an hour before the attack, the suspect's family reported him missing. He is now charged with first-degree murder. In Palm Beach Gardens, Nico Clemens, NBC6 News.
This is the last thing we need. Another war zone in the Middle East after what we have seen in Gaza and Lebanon and elsewhere in the region.
That we can't really foresee what will happen, but this definitely is a major development.
This is obviously not happening in a black box. There are regional dynamics in play. How do you think the global powers, Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the United States, are likely to respond?
And even took control of the headquarters for the city's police force. And hours earlier, they took control of a highway that links Aleppo to the capital Damascus that's been used by government forces to transport weapons.
And they pretty much, we understand, taken over all of the city. The map is changing dramatically. Now, of course, this asks questions. What does this mean for President Assad? It's my understanding that he has been to Moscow to try and appeal for more help from the Kremlin. I think in Moscow, Vladimir Putin is, he's very worried about the situation that is unfolding in Syria. Remember, it's not that long ago that he had to send in his air force to basically keep President Assad in power so he wasn't toppled by the opposition back during the revolution. Now, they are pledging a counter-offensive, and we are seeing the first glimmer of that tonight. Very heavy airstrikes, we understand, in and around Aleppo. And I think, again, that will suggest that there is going to be a big fight when, of course, President Assad can muster the forces to launch a counter-strike.
Those worlds in space are as countless as all the grains of sand on all the beaches of the earth. Each of those worlds is as real as ours. In every one of them, there's a succession of incidents, events, occurrences which influence its future. Countless worlds, numberless moments, an immensity of space and time. And our small planet, at this moment, here we face a critical branch point in history. What we do with our world right now will propagate down through the centuries and powerfully affect the destiny of our descendants. It is well within our power to destroy our civilization and perhaps our species as well. If we capitulate to superstition or greed or stupidity, we can plunge our world into a darkness deeper than the time between the collapse of classical civilization and the Italian Renaissance. But we are also capable of using our compassion and our intelligence, our technology and our wealth to make an abundant and meaningful life for every inhabitant of this planet, to enhance enormously our understanding of the universe, and to carry us to the stars.